Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this webinar from on Integration Acceleration, Improving ITSM with Ivanti Neurons for iPaaS. I'm David Pickering. I work in product marketing down in Australia, and I'll be walking you through this session over the next 30 minutes. The session will be recorded, so you can review that later. We will send a link to you soon. If you have any questions, you'll see on your screen a Q&A box. So please type your questions into there and we will answer those during the session. You will also see there is a document section. We've put in some links there for you to look at another video of the Ivanti Neurons iPaaS solution, a blog, and also our webpage for further information. So as I said, any questions you want answered, please jump onto the Q&A box and we will attempt to answer those in the 30 minutes that we have. So let's get started. What are the key things that we're looking at? So why are we going down this path of integrations? Why is it so hard? And anyone who's worked in the industry for a period of time, particularly service management, will know that integrating into service management can sometimes be very complicated and very hard to do. But the key reason we're looking at this is there's been that explosive growth of applications, particularly in the SaaS arena. Just in my own right, if I look at my log-on icons to log into a SaaS application, there's probably 70 or 80 applications. Now, I don't go and use all of those, but they're the ones that are available to me to use. And then there's all the back-end applications that I don't have access to, like an SAP or other financial systems potentially in the background. And on average, there's 130 SaaS applications in most organizations. So that's a lot of information that's out there that may be relevant to a service management platform. So how do you bring that data in there? The other part of this is we want to start to drive towards that hyper-automation. So many people look at wanting to automate, but they're only automating within the service management platform. So within Ivanti Neurons for ITSM, for example, we've got a lot of automation there. We've got workflow capabilities, drag and drop editors. But then when we want to go to external applications, it's really just a data integration exchange. But what about if we could run the workflows seamlessly across those platforms and be able to talk to external applications from within the Ivanti Neurons ITSM platform? And the ability to build out an integration that makes it simple. So the ability to start to get you more agile on those integrations. As we all know, our technologies change at different times over an organization's life. And when they do change and you've got an integration, you have to redo that integration. And that can be time consuming and challenging. What about if we already had the ability to be able to do that simply without too much complexity in doing that? So these are all the reasons that we're trying to drive towards those service management integrations, is bringing data in and making it easy to be able to drive that applications. And the big challenge that tends to stop people from integrating is it's time consuming and labor intensive. And that's often we'll do manual processes. Often we'll do manual processes rather than necessarily going and trying to build out that integration. And if we're doing it manually, then that can lead to errors, inaccurate data, data's not in sync properly, it's not up to date, etc. Now, what about if we go and want to have that data go bi-directional? So we want it to go in two directions. And that makes more sense because sometimes if you're sending information off to a procurement system, you want to get responses back and vice versa. So incomplete workflow processes, it makes it restrictive to get that data to and from. So what happens is a lot of organizations will just send the data one way. And that can limit, expanding out and doing true digital transformation. And building out those integrations is complex. You need the right resources and skills, so they need to have the right expertise and technical abilities to be able to understand how to write an API, and it can be time consuming to develop that API. Then the maintaining of that, so if we need to change it, we need to update it, you've got to go and get the same person or team to go and rebuild that API or change it, and be able to do that easily and quickly is sometimes where you start to run into more problems. Yes, you created that beautiful integration, but then you were unable to maintain that and it gets out of date. So integration and automation really is the center of an organization's productivity and efficiency. So the ability to have that data flowing in and out of service management or other applications, depending on how you want to use this. But looking at the simple use case of procurement, often procurement's done in a different system. So having a process where it's requested through service management, approved through service management, and it automatically goes out to the procurement system, gets processed and automatically comes back in, simplifying that process can improve productivity and efficiency and get you up to date. So how are we doing this? Because you're saying, I can integrate with service management now, but you've already talked about some of those challenges, which is that complexity and maintenance. What we've introduced is Ivanti Neurons iPaaS. And iPaaS is an integration platform as a service, which enables you to do these integrations really easily and simply. And what we want to do is make external integration easy. So make it really easy for you as to how do you integrate out to external systems. And the reason we want to do that is accelerate the ability for you to build integrations in days or hours, not weeks or months. I'm sure if you've built an integration, you'll see that it takes a long period of time for you to go and build that. When you look at the demo that we'll do in a few minutes, we've made it simple, so it's days or hours to build that integration. Doing that through a drag and drop, low code, no code platform. So in the same way, Ivanti Neurons for ITSM is low code, no code, exactly the same concept. We want you to just do drag and drop and be able to connect easily. You don't need to go out and get those developers who know in depth about APIs and capabilities. And it's leveraging a platform that is secure and flexible and scalable, so you know it's safe to use from the point of view of your integrations. It's out there, it will work for you. And Ivanti Neurons for iPaaS, it's an add-on offering. So for Ivanti Neurons, whether you're using ITSM, ITAM, the line of business, all those combinations, it's an add-on offering that gives you that integration capability. It's a no-code platform to quickly build those integrations. And it's based on the leading iPaaS technology, which is Workato. And they have a library of over 1,000 connectors, making it usable from as soon as you start to have access to it. It's seamlessly integrated into your Ivanti Neurons for ITSM admin user experience. So you're not having to go to a different user experience to go and use it. You just jump into your admin and there's a menu option there. And we've already pre-built recipes for common service management integration use cases, which will continue to expand as we develop this further along. So Jira, Azure DevOps, Slack, Salesforce, Workday, GitHub, and Jenkins are all recipes that we have predefined for you. And we'll extend that, as I talked about, as we move forward. But enough about me talking about what the product looks like, what the product is. Why don't we go and have a look at a demonstration from a colleague of mine, Aaron Alexander.
As part of this overview, we're going to have a look at the new Ivanti integration platform as a service offering, also known as Ivanti iPaaS. The iPaaS solution is fully integrated into Neurons for ITSM, allowing you direct access via the administration tool. The iPaaS solution is a full drag and drop, low code, no code application for building out integrations. The system has a wide variety of pre-built connections and recipes. A recipe is a list of pre-built steps as part of a workflow integration with one or more connections to a third-party solution. And we're going to have a look at a number of those as we walk through this overview. Ivanti has some pre-built recipes from ITSM into things like Jira, Salesforce, and many other applications. As part of this overview, we're going to have a look at the ITSM and Jira integration. As part of the project's dashboard over here, we can see a folder structure that allows me to break out my different integrations. And underneath that, you can see some relevant folders around the different connections, the recipes, and any sub-functions we may have for those recipes. For this overview, we're going to concentrate on the ITSM to Jira integration recipe. As we move into the recipe, the first screen that we're presented with is around the jobs. So these are the relevant actions that have taken place based on our trigger action that we're going to look at in a second. It's also going to tell us the number of successful jobs and the failed jobs that sit beneath that. If we stop the recipe and then go into the edit screen, we're going to see the breakdown of this particular integration. The first being the trigger point, and if we double click into that trigger point, we're going to see on the right hand side an overview of what that is. First being the application, which is pointing at Ivanti Neurons connection. The trigger being a new or updated record. The connection itself, which we do have the ability to switch connections if we want to point it at a dev or a test system. And then finally the setup, which is where we can filter down the records we want it to look at, so it's not every new or updated record. Under the object type, as we select and drop that down, you'll see it's fully integrated into Neurons for ITSM, meaning that we'll look at the common processes such as incident problem change, and also into the wider LOB, where we can look at project, case management, and work orders. Also, as part of this stage, we can define the number of records and how far we want it to go back. So it can either be from present date if we leave blank, or we can go back to a period of time. Underneath that, we can set our trigger action. And what I mean by that is we can set which data we want it to look at. So for example, this one, as I head into the trigger data, it will pull me the relevant fields from my ITSM system. And this will also look back at any custom fields that I've created as part of my system. And I can simply either search directly from within here, so maybe I want to also look at the priority, for example. It's going to show me my relevant fields that I could simply drag and drop into my scenario. For this particular one, we're looking at anything where the category equals application security. Another big feature of this system is its inbuilt monitoring and error handling. So as part of the system, we can add on for it to monitor the relevant steps that we put in place. And then even further, if it was to error as part of that, what we want it to do. Do we want it to retry? If so, how many times? What time period do we want to wait between that? And if we want to configure any error conditions that meet based on that scenario. If we do hit an error, we can also define the different actions that we may want it to take in place, such as putting out to a log file, maybe sending an email, or even creating an incident into the Ivanti ITSM tool. If we have a very quick look at the relevant steps to this integration, the first thing that it's going to go ahead and do is once it's found an incident that's been updated or new with this particular categorization, it's going to go and search my Jira system. And again, at the top here, we've configured the application that we want it to look at. The relevant query, which is what we're looking for, is search issues, but you can see there's a number of other actions that it could perform. The connection, so my Jira integration. The setup being what I'm looking for. So this will be our label with our incident number. If it was to go ahead and find a record and match that in my Jira system, it's then going to move into this if or else type scenario, where we can say, if that particular number is present, then go and check to see if that record matches the subject and the description between the two systems. If it doesn't, go ahead and perform an update. If it can't find a record at all, go and perform a create. And again, from within here, the system pulls the relevant fields from my Jira system. So again, if I drop this down, I can see the relevant different projects that I have, and if I want it to create either a task or a bug or an epic and so on. And that goes the same with the information that I want to present around either the summary or the description fields. Simply clicking into these allow me to go to the relevant step. So the step one being identify the incident. And again, I can pull relevant fields from that area. So let's go ahead and see this particular integration in action. So I have a pre-built incident already, and what I'm going to do is set the categorization to be application security, which is our trigger condition. And upon saving, the workflow will start to trigger. If we move back into that recipe, we can see here that it's sat here, it's currently waiting. And for the demo purpose, we're just going to say check for jobs now. This should now pick up the actual work that we've just created and see that it has a job, and now start to process that workflow. We'll see that it is now processed and it has been successful. And the nice thing about this tool is we can actually walk through the relevant steps and we can actually see information that was passed, the different conditions that was met or not met. As we can see here, it went down to my create an issue, and doing so I can simply see the relevant information and the output back from the API on the Jira side. We can see here it's created me a bug with the key ISM 270. If I move to my Jira system, I can see here in a second that ISM 270 pops in and the relevant data maps to the incident that I've created. Also, as part of my pre-built recipes, I do have a recipe to take the comments from Jira and transition them into the IT ticket. So I'm going to go ahead and say from Jira, I'm going to say test and save that. What we'll know is if we now come back to our recipes and if we come back a step, we'll see we've got some other types of actions, and it's this particular one that it's going to run. And again, we can see here it's currently waiting. And if we move into that particular incident and refresh that page, we should see a particular journal record from Jira test with the accurate date and time. So we've had a look at some of the pre-built recipes. As I mentioned up front, the system is a no-code, low-code system with an inbuilt array of connections. So let's go ahead and walk you through building one from scratch. So I'm going to go into my workflow folder. I'm going to come over here on the right hand side and create a recipe. Doing so, the first thing it's going to ask me is a name for my recipe, the folder location that I want to store that in, as well as my starting point. Remember, this is our trigger for the integration to start. So that could be from an application. And what we mean by that is it could be a new record being created in Salesforce. It could be an instance created in ITSM and so on. It could be just run on a schedule because we may use this to transition data from one system to another. It could be a webhook or it could be an API and so on. So we're going to call this our iPaaS demo. If we hit start building, it's going to take us into our recipe builder. On the right hand side, the first thing it's going to ask us for is the type of application. And the first ones we'll see is applications that we already have pre-built connections for. You'll also see beneath that the ability to see all apps. I spoke about having a wide variety of pre-built connectors, and you can see from this list we have an abundance of those. Everything from things like Salesforce, DocuSign, Confluence, Dropbox, Freshdesk, Gmail, Google Workforce, and so on. You can see there's an array of these. And again, if you don't find the one that you're looking for, it also may be possible that the community may have also created one as well. And we can see here where it's one for the Microsoft Graph API. Selecting on one of these will actually drive how you may want this recipe to start. I'm going to actually start that by my Ivanti Neurons connector. And I'm going to do that via either a new or updated record. I'm going to use my connection that I have pre-built. It's going to be driven from an incident. And I'm going to leave the date blank because I want it to default from an hour ago. And I'm going to set my trigger to condition to be based if the priority is set to a P1. So I'm going to go ahead and find the priority field on the left hand side. I'm going to select that and I'm going to say if that is equal to a 1. After we've got that, I may now want to define what I want it to do. So again, clicking on this Actions tab, it now asks me what I want to do from within here. So I'm adding a handling of errors. Doing so, it will structure what steps it's going to monitor and then maybe what you want it to do based on that error. So at this point, I can start to get it to perform some actions. So select on the app indication. I may want it to send an email. The iPaaS solution has an inbuilt email system. So if we say email, we can then start to fill out our to address, our subject, and the message we want to position from here. On the relevant fields that we click into, it will automatically pull out our data pill. Doing so, it allows us to look at the relevant fields that we want to pull from and the relevant steps. So we're going to look at the step 1, which relates back to the new or updated record that equals a priority 1. Doing so allows me to now start to pull information directly from the record. So I could maybe pull the incident number, for example. And again, as I start to find those, I can simply double click and drag that across. That same goes to things like the message and any information that you want to pull directly from the data pill itself. Remember, all of these fields that appear on the left-hand side are dynamically pulled from the system, including any custom fields that you may have created in the relevant business object. Now we've configured our email, we can add some additional steps if we wish. So again, from within here, we could add an if or else. We could ever add another action if we wanted to, again, drilling into any further actions. So this time we may decide that we may want to send maybe an SMS, for example. I could go ahead and add that in there. Again, defining the mobile number and the message I wanted to. I may go a step further and actually define that I actually need to add that into my Jira system as a task. So again, I can select into my Jira connection. I can say I want it to create me an issue. I can select a relevant connection, or I could add a new one at this point. And now I can go ahead and select the project. So for example, in this one, I'm going to use Ivanti SC demo, and I want it to create a task, and I also want it to use the same project type, issue type. So again, using the relevant information, I can select that. And again, I can start to pull relevant information from here. So it could be our subject, so it's suggested some for me. And in our description, we may want to add our symptom. And again, we've now added those into the system. At this point, we could also go ahead and start to define our errors. So for example, if we had an error, I could simply again decide on that I may want to add an email. And again, we could perform our our subject. And even from within here, we can start to pull across our error messages. Now we've configured our relevant steps. At this point, we could actually save that and enable the process, or I could simply at this point decide to run a test case. So it would look for relevant records that are already created. So if we was to go ahead to our incident and change this to a P1, so we have some data sets sat there. Now we've fixed the relevant steps that was wrong in our recipe, we can come back and now say test recipe again. Again, it would now look at our data set and try and perform that recipe. We can see here it's now processing and it was marked as successful. Again, I can click into the relevant steps to actually see what it's done. So we can see here, this was the record that it brought back and the relevant fields that I can actually see all the data behind that. I can also see that it's created me an email, and I can also see that it's created me a task with the ISM code 271. If we move back up to our Jira system, we can see now it's created me a task again with that code ISM 271. However, if we click into it, we can see that it's also replicated that same symptoms and description field. If we wanted to tweak that at this point, we can simply go back to the recipe and we could decide to continue through. So again, I could come back into that create issue. And maybe, for example, I want to add in here that we have a P1 and we may want to add the incident number. And again, then maybe want to add the subject after that as well. So again, we can add those in there to append to those. And if we want to add any additional fields, we can simply come down here and find any other app sets we want. So maybe we want to add a label, and the label may be our incident number because we may want to reuse that later on. So again, if I now come back in and say test recipe, we can see here that it's processing our P1 record. And again, we can see as we walk through, selecting to our create, we've now got a task for 272. Again, moving to our Jira system, we'll see in a second a new task pop through for 272. And this time we'll see that it's got P1, our incident number associated, and we've filled out our label with our new incident number. We can now at this point come in here and save that recipe, and that can now be used as part of the workflow moving forward.
So I hope you found that useful from the demonstration side of things, and seeing how easy it is to go and create, integrations using the iPaaS solution. And as we mentioned, there's 1,000+ connectors. This slide's just giving you a small list of connectors in the different areas. So it doesn't have to be IT. It can be out to HR, say as Workday, project management through Jira. It could be development tools like GitHub, Azure DevOps, Jenkins, collaboration tools. Maybe you're using Slack and you want some Slack bots to integrate in there. We've got a great scenario for that with using the Ivanti iPaaS solution, or it might be into Salesforce. So all of these plus more you can use. Now, if you don't have the capability if there's no connector for you, and one of the questions that came in through the question and answer was you can go and create your own connector using, say, webhooks or a REST API. So there's still the ability to extend out to potentially others. And it can be to on-premise solutions. So it doesn't have to be a SaaS to SaaS. It could be your Ivanti Neurons cloud, and you need to go to an on-premise solution. We do have the ability to go on-premise as well. Now, part of the core thing is why do we think this is a better solution? Firstly, it's powered by the leader in iPaaS, which is Workato. It's a secure, stable, enterprise-grade platform, and it gives you that seamless integration into the Ivanti Neurons ITSM platform. It's got the speed. You're able to rapidly go and build your integrations using that drag and drop editor that Aaron just showed. And you can build those integrations in hours or days, not having to do it over weeks or months. It's low code, no code. So as we saw in the demonstration, really simple to go and build out those integrations. And there's that thousands of connectors that you have available to you. And we believe that it's going to give you some significant benefits. Using the platform together, the agility, so the ability to be able to go and do this quickly, change it quickly, go and modify it. Whatever you need to do with that integration is now fast and seamless and easy. It's going to increase the productivity, particularly for administrators who would have previously done a lot of this work. It's going to make that really easy for you, and without having to get into how does an API work on that particular connector. We believe it will improve your service quality as well. So you'll be able to get better data and have that up to date on a regular basis. So providing you more information and better information. Less manual work, so the lower administration effort, and it's highly configurable. So you can configure that workflow to work the way you want it to work and have workflow that goes across from Ivanti Neurons ITSM to some other tool set that you're connecting to. So I've got a couple of minutes left. Another question that we have there, are we going to build out more predefined recipes for other connectors? Yes, we are. As we work through the use cases of what do we want to integrate to and how do we want to connect to them and what that workflow is, we'll build out recipes for that. And as I've mentioned, there's a prototype recipe at the moment that Aaron built out, which is with Slack and having a Slack bot interrogate and talk to Ivanti Neurons for ITSM. So we will build out more of those recipes and have them available as we get further through the process of defining what those use cases might be. If there's no other questions, as I mentioned, this is recorded. We will send it out to you in the next few days. If you want more information, the doc's there. We have our website available to look at the information there. We have a blog that talks about how integrating using Ivanti Neurons iPaaS makes it easy for you, and there's also the video to refer back to. And thank you for your time today. I hope that this was informative for you to understand what the iPaaS solution does for you, and hopefully you understand now why we're talking about making integration made easy for you. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope that was useful for you. Thank you.